Hello and welcome. I'm Mark Lynn, filling in for Ramesh Ramachandran, and this is Voice of the Global South, your weekly guide to everything that's happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. On the show this week, what does an escalation in the West Asia conflict mean for the hostages in Hamas's custody, while the whole region seems to become hostage to a war beyond borders? Has the 16th Brics Summit made an impact on the world order with the expansion of the grouping? We revisit some of the milestones of BRICS over the years, with India playing a decisive role. We look at the BRICS outcome document on strengthening multilateralism for just global development and security. And we look at how Pakistan is trying to stifle the judiciary with the passage of a new law on judicial appointments. All that and much, much more coming up here on the Voice of the Global South. The Hamas chief, Yahya Sinwar, is dead. Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah is dead. Israel also claims to have eliminated Hashim Safieddine, who was a potential successor in Hezbollah. Now, Israel has conducted airstrikes on military targets in Iran. The IDF launched these strikes in response to attacks from Iran and its proxies, including a significant missile barrage earlier this month. The operation involved multiple waves of airstrikes targeting Iranian military installations, focusing on air defense systems and ballistic missile manufacturing sites.
I can now confirm that we have concluded the Israeli response to Iran's attack against Israel. We conducted targeted and precise strikes on military targets in Iran, thwarting immediate threats to the state of Israel. The Israel Defense Forces has fulfilled its mission. If the regime in Iran were to make the mistake of beginning a new round of escalation, we will be obligated to respond. Our message is clear. All those who threaten the state of Israel and seek to drag the region into wider escalation will pay a heavy price.
The situation is tense, with both sides on high alert for potential retaliation. It's a complex and volatile situation that could have significant implications for the region and beyond. However, the U.S. believes that Israel is achieving its goals. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's visit to Israel on October 22 clearly demonstrates the U.S.'s desire for a ceasefire. But remember what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just said.
Yahya Sinwar is dead. He was killed in Rafah by the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end.
Well, Blinken has urged Netanyahu to revive ceasefire talks to end the war in Gaza and has pressed for more aid to be allowed to enter the Palestinian territory. The visit got off to an inauspicious start for Hezbollah as it launched, in fact, medium-range missiles towards Tel Aviv, temporarily shutting down Ben Gurion Airport, where Blinken had landed. The U.S. is deeply involved in this conflict.
October 7th, a year ago, Israel has achieved most of its strategic objectives when it comes to Gaza, all with the idea of making sure that October 7th could never happen again. In the space of a year, it's managed to dismantle Hamas's military capacity. It's destroyed a bunch of its arsenal. It's eliminated its senior leadership, including, most recently, Yahya Sinwar. This has come at the cost, great cost, to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Now is the time to turn those successes into an enduring strategic success. And there are really two things left to do. Get the hostages home and bring the war to an end with an understanding of what will follow.
Blinken repeated that the United States has rejected any Israeli occupation of Gaza and said that he had been assured by Netanyahu that Israel had no plans, despite pressure from many in his own party to allow settlers to return. Now, Western allies of Israel see Yahya Sinwar's killing last week as a potential breakthrough by providing Netanyahu's far-right government political cover to assert that its objectives have been achieved in Gaza. But Israel refuses to do so. For its part, Hamas has refused to free scores of hostages in Gaza seized in its October 7, 2023 raid on Israel without an Israeli pledge to end the war and pull out of its territory. The fight is now beyond territory. It has now become a fight for the people, the hostages whose future hang in the balance of a promise. But as Blinken met Israeli leaders, Hezbollah ruled out entering negotiations with Israel while the fighting continues. Hezbollah also claimed responsibility for a drone attack targeting Netanyahu's holiday home on Saturday. Iran is on its toes, retaliating against Israel in every possible way. Early on Tuesday, Hezbollah said that it had launched a volley of rockets at 2 Israeli military bases near Tel Aviv, as well as a naval base in Haifa. Israel declared a state of emergency in the Tel Aviv area, and the emergency service reported a man injured by falling debris in the northern town of Maghan Michael. So here's the question. With no clear enemy, does Israel think that it has the upper hand to focus on a hostage deal? And will the US be able to convince Israel? Reports that, in fact, 2 parallel deals are already on the table. That's what people say. You know, Israel attempts to make progress towards a deal with Hamas that would see the release of hostages in Gaza. Moreover, the backdrop of the violence to Blinken's visit, it serves to illustrate the sparse hope that his visit will result in a breakthrough. Amid peace talks by Blinken, in fact, Israeli strikes pounded Beirut's southern suburbs on Wednesday, and Hezbollah said that it had fired precision-guided missiles for the first time at Israeli targets. Israel has 1 month to implement significant improvements to the humanitarian situation in Gaza or jeopardize the continued supply of US weapons. But the lingering question is, when will all this end? With the US taking a more direct role in the conflict resolution, will their efforts work in favor of the hostages? In the end, is this about the hostages at all? Have they been forgotten, like many of the others caught in the crossfire? It's a heartbreaking situation, and the safety and well-being of the hostages should indeed be a priority. Moving on, the 16th Brics Summit held in Kazan from October 22 to 24, 2024 saw new members participating. Iran, Saudi Arabia was to be there, UAE, Egypt, Ethiopia and Argentina. Additionally, leaders from countries interested in deepening ties with BRICS, Turkey and Vietnam also attended. But they are not the only ones. According to the Russian President Vladimir Putin, more than 30 countries have expressed interest in joining BRICS. These include nations from the global south and east, such as Malaysia, Thailand, Turkey, Algeria and Bolivia. The growing interest highlights BRICS' increasing influence and appeal as an alternative global grouping in a multipolar world order.
I would like to emphasize that Thailand has much to offer to the BRICS members. We are at the strategic location in the middle of Southeast Asia, making us a gateway to the ASEAN market with over 600 million people. As one of the main food producers, Thailand could be a great partner for food security as we aim to be the kitchen of the world.
Well, the expansion of BRICS beyond Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa has several significant implications. There is obvious increased economic clout now that BRICS will represent a larger share of the global population and GDP. Clearly, the grouping can act as a counterbalance to Western-dominated global institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Now, several new members bringing considerable geostrategic value, especially in the energy sector. The combined oil production of BRICS members with Russia, Iran and possibly Saudi Arabia if they join will increase significantly, hence influencing global energy markets. But here's what the author of the idea of BRICS, the former Goldman Sachs chief economist Tim O'Neill, has to say on this idea, which he started 23 years ago.
I'll have Mr. BRICS stamped on my forehead forever. I get asked by many of their advisors, and of course I've met some of the leaders, and I say to them, why don't you try to make it clear what things you can genuinely achieve together? And there are some. They could do wonders about funding new vaccines or drugs for infectious diseases, which are a huge problem in many of the BRICS countries. They could do enormous things if they were serious about fighting climate change. And of course, linked to this rather slightly fanciful talk about some alternative currency to the dollar.
Well, the expansion adds legitimacy to BRICS and makes it more attractive for other countries to join, potentially leading to further growth and influence. This is a time, and it's going to influence global shifts as well. The shifts are bound to impact global trade, investment and political dynamics. The expansion of BRICS implies a stronger economic and geopolitical presence, challenging the traditional Western dominance and also promoting a more balanced global order. However, stable relations between India and China are crucial for the stability and effectiveness of BRICS.
If they wanted to be really serious about economic matters, why don't they genuinely pursue less tariff-based trade between each other? You know, I often say that I'll treat the BRICS group seriously when I see signs that the two countries that really matter, China and India, actually really trying to agree on things rather than effectively trying to confront each other all the time.
Well, these countries are not only the largest economies in the group, but they are also the largest countries on earth. The bilateral talks between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Chinese President Xi Jinping during the Brics Summit in Kazan, it bodes well for the grouping to achieve a larger global objective.
The restoration of peace and tranquility in the border areas will create space for returning us towards the path of normalization of our bilateral relations. Officials will now take the next steps to discuss enhancing strategic communication and stabilizing bilateral relations by utilizing the relevant official bilateral dialogue mechanisms, including at the level of our respective foreign ministers.
A stable India-China relationship is vital for the cohesion and success of BRICS as it strengthens the bloc's economic and political influence on the global stage. Now, we've spoken at length about BRICS and what its expansion means for the world. Let's now look at the outcome document of the 16th BRICS Summit in Kazan and to what extent it charts a course for the Global South. Jayant Das gets us the highlights of the outcome document.
Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which aims to reverse biodiversity loss
is special in the fact that it gathered the recently extended group for the first time under its ambit. Now, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi admired the inclusivity of BRICS in his statement before departing for this year's BRICS Summit hosted by Russia. The concept of BRICS, now containing more nations than its acronym, was first discussed in 2006 on the sidelines of the G8 Outreach Summit. Now, India was among the founding members besides Russia and China, which later also pulled in Brazil. South Africa joined in 2010. But what role has India played in BRICS? What are some of the milestones that BRICS has witnessed with India as a member? And what is the future of BRICS with the growing influence and power of India? First and foremost, India is emerging as the fastest growing economy in the BRICS. China's growth may have shrunk, but India and China together can make BRICS realize its true potential. As of the fiscal year 2023-24, India's economy had a GDP of approximately $3.9 trillion. Add to that the expected growth of 7% for FY25, and India will cross the $4.1 trillion mark. India forms about 13% of the total economic power of the BRICS group, which is more than $28.5 trillion. India is also the second largest economy in the BRICS group, with an unbounded potential for growth. So India has shared its resources with fellow developing nations for a more inclusive, holistic development. The Indian companies have invested about $8 to $9 billion in South Africa. Many programs have been launched by India to help South Africa on various fronts. The India-Africa Maitri Scholarship Scheme enables students in South Africa to travel to India for education. Then there is the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, which aims to provide training in skills and technology as well as services which are fully funded by the Indian government. In 2018, India approved the Memorandum of Understanding for cooperation between India and South Africa in the space sector. Now, moving on, the Indian investments in Brazil, these have recorded more than $6 billion US. Brazil has been a close partner of India in many fields such as trade, security, even space. Brazil took over the G20 presidency from India and will take forward the inclusive Global South agenda, which was promoted by India. India has hosted BRICS thrice so far, with many important decisions coming out of these. It was in the 2016 BRICS Summit hosted by India that the first BRICS BIMSTEC Outreach Summit was held. It was a crucial meeting to include the interests of the BIMSTEC nations, with India channeling their voices and concerns to the BRICS platform. The 2016 BRICS under India's presidency also saw the New Development Bank getting approvals for the first set of loans. The New Development Bank was founded in 2015 by the BRICS nations as a necessary alternative to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Many feel the World Bank and the IMF are influenced by a Western worldview and could restrict the growth potential of the developing countries. Now, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are recent examples also of economic failures due to cold austerity measures and economic reshuffling, which was suggested by the West, or these countries, as one could say. But, India hosted the BRICS Summit in 2021, which was also the 15th anniversary of the bloc. This edition of BRICS stressed on strengthening and reforming the multilateral system so that intergovernmental bodies such as the UN employ inclusive methods to follow their duties. Adopting the Delhi Declaration then, the group had reaffirmed its intentions. This is for reform of the UN and the UN Security Council. Other agreements included a BRICS cooperation in remote sensing satellites and a BRICS alliance in green tourism. So India has approved with its actions time and again that it is, in fact, the voice of the Global South. It was under India's G20 presidency that concerns of the Global South nations found a voice. Over time, India has reiterated these issues of the Global South at institutions such as the United Nations. Now, one big step in India's commitment towards the Global South under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership was his decision to add the African Union as a permanent member to the G20. He further echoed the Global South's agenda in the Voice of the Global South summits. The developments at the recently concluded 2024 BRICS, they pose new opportunities and challenges for India, while the newly added nations further India's goals for a multipolar, non-Western group of countries. Navigating and balancing all personal goals of the new members may be a challenge. China's ambitions to expand its influence and Russia's ambitions to sway global perception through BRICS are also aspects that India need not necessarily conform with. And India's neutrality will be what other countries in the expanded BRICS would like to emulate. So India has and will continue to be the voice of reason and balance in BRICS to steer this grouping towards the inclusive agenda. Moving on, Pakistan's parliament has passed the 26th Constitutional Amendment Bill, fundamentally changing the judicial appointment process. The country now operates under a parliamentary-controlled judicial system, where judges will be selected based on their connections to the government. Ragini Sudhir Chore has the details.
In a major shake-up of Pakistan's judiciary, Justice Yahya Afridi has been appointed as the 30th Chief Justice of Pakistan. His nomination came through a special 12-member parliamentary committee and was officially approved by President Asif Ali Zardari on October 22nd. This appointment is significant, arriving just days after Pakistan's parliament passed the 26th Constitutional Amendment Bill, dramatically altering how judges are appointed. The country has effectively transitioned to a parliamentary-controlled judicial system. In simple terms, judges will now be chosen based on their ties to the government. The bill was passed in a late-night session that started at 11:36 p.m. on Sunday and stretched past midnight, sparking heated debates. Critics argue this move signals the end of independent judiciary and perhaps the end of democracy in Pakistan. So what's the big deal? Pakistan's government now has the power to appoint judges. Yes, you heard it right. The ruling elite gets to decide who sits in the highest judicial seats of power. The amendment passed on October 21st with the government securing 225 votes in the National Assembly, one more than they needed. Only 12 members from PTI and the Sunni Ittihad Council stood against it. A close call? Not really. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif hailed the day as historic. But let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The judges are no longer appointed by seniority or merit. It's a political game now, where proximity to power seems to be the new criteria for becoming Chief Justice. This system could very well serve the interest of those in power rather than upholding the law. The amendment also caps the tenure of the Chief Justice at 3 years or until they turn 65, whichever comes first. Previously, judicial appointments were based on seniority, with judges serving longer, often resulting in greater independence. Not anymore. The timing of this bill raises eyebrows. It came just before Chief Justice's retirement. Normally, Justice Mansoor Ali Shah, a senior judge seen as sympathetic to Imran Khan's PTI, would have been next in line. But now, with the new system in place, the government can appoint someone more aligned with its interests. Coincidence? Many don't think so. Is this really about efficiency and accountability as the government claims? Or is it about tipping the scales of justice in their favor? Let's break it down. Shorter tenures. Limiting the Chief Justice's tenure to 3 years disrupts a tradition that allowed for greater judicial independence. The 3-year cap ensures that no Chief Justice will serve long enough to develop significant influence or independence from the political elite. Reduce suo motu powers. The amendment significantly dilutes the Supreme Court's ability to take action on important matters without a formal request. In other words, the courts will be less likely to intervene in cases that involve government outreach. Unchecked powers to the Parliament. The bill also includes a clause that prevents decision made by the committee from being questioned in the court. Essentially, once the committee has spoken, the judiciary has no say. Centralized judicial authority. The apex court now has powers to transfer cases from high courts to itself, concentrating authority at the very top. But will these changes restore public faith in judiciary or further erode it? It is only for the time to tell whether this will be a success feather for Pakistan or will it become a judicial failure. Ragini Sudhir Chaure for DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of the Voice of the Global South. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest news on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.